My sister looked me in the eye after a 5-hour drive with my wife standing beside me and the framed engagement print she'd asked me to collect still under my arm and said, "I'm sorry, but I genuinely don't know why you're here." She didn't whisper it. She said it in the entrance hall of her engagement dinner venue, under a wall of flowers I knew she couldn't afford, with Nathan's parents 10 feet away and 2 waiters pretending not to listen. She even had that tight little apologetic smile on her face, like I was the awkward one for showing up where I supposedly didn't belong. For a second, I thought she was joking. Then Mara's hand tightened around my wrist, and I realized she wasn't. We'd been in the car for 5 hours. Olivia had texted me the arrival time herself, asked Mara about dress code because Nathan's mom notices everything, and made me stop in Swindon on the way to collect the oversized framed print of their engagement photos because the venue needed it before the family pictures. And now she was standing there in a cream dress telling me there had been some kind of misunderstanding. "Olivia," I said, "what are you talking about?" She gave a short laugh and lowered her voice without actually lowering it enough to matter. "I think wires got crossed." That was the first thing that felt wrong. Not the lie, the tone. She didn't sound confused. She sounded rehearsed. Nathan walked over then, all polished smile and expensive watch, but the second he saw my face, that smile tightened. Not surprise, recognition. Like he already knew enough to want this handled fast. "Everything all right?" he asked. Before I could answer, Olivia said, "Ethan and Mara must have misunderstood the invite situation." Invite situation. Not mix-up, not mistake. Something about the phrase made my stomach turn. It sounded pre-written, like she'd practiced saying it in a mirror until it made me sound like a pushy guest instead of her brother. Mara, who had been quiet until then, leaned slightly toward me and murmured, "She keeps looking past you." I followed Olivia's eyes and saw exactly where they kept landing. Nathan's mother. Vivian was standing by the champagne table in a dark green dress, watching us with the kind of expression people wear when they've already been warned about someone and are waiting for them to prove it. That was when the embarrassment turned into something colder. I said, "You texted me on Thursday telling us not to be late because Nathan's parents wanted family photos before dinner." Olivia's smile didn't move. "I said I'd let you know if we had room." Another lie. Clean. Immediate. Public. Mara let out a tiny breath through her nose. "No, you didn't." Olivia's eyes flashed at her, then right back to Vivian. Not our mother. Not Nathan. Vivian. Like this whole conversation was happening for her benefit. I looked down at the framed engagement print in my hands, the one Olivia had called me twice that afternoon to make sure I didn't forget, and suddenly understood that I hadn't driven 5 hours for a family celebration. I'd driven 5 hours to be managed. And whatever Olivia was scared of, it wasn't me being angry. It was me saying the wrong thing in front of Nathan's mother.
Mara saw it before I did. Not just that Olivia kept glancing at Vivian, the way she was doing it. Quick little checks after every sentence, like she wasn't trying to convince me at all. She was checking whether Nathan's mother was still buying the act. "Olivia," Mara said, calm enough to make it worse, "you asked me yesterday whether I thought the navy shawl would clash with the table flowers. You don't get to act like we hallucinated this invitation." For the first time, Olivia's smile slipped. Only for a second, but it was enough. Nathan stepped in with that soft, polished tone men use when you want to sound neutral while quietly choosing a side. Maybe everyone's tired. It's been a long day. It had been a long day. 5 hours in the car, 1 motorway closure, and 40 minutes of Olivia texting me updates about the venue schedule like I was part of the family right up until the second I became a problem. I said, tired isn't the issue. Being told I wasn't invited to an event I picked up half the decor for is. Olivia's face hardened at the word decor. There it was again, that flash of panic that only showed when money got close to the surface. She took a step toward me and lowered her voice. "Can we not do this here? If by this you mean ask why you're lying in front of Nathan's family, no." Her jaw tightened. "You're making a scene." That almost made me laugh. She was the one publicly pretending her brother and wife had turned up uninvited after a 5-hour drive, and somehow I was the one making a scene for not smiling and backing out of the room. Before I could answer, my mother appeared from the dining room with the expression of a woman who knew disaster when she saw it, but still thought she might be able to iron it flat. "What's going on?" she asked. Olivia turned to her so fast it was almost impressive. "Nothing. Ethan got the wrong idea about tonight." My mother frowned. "What wrong idea? I told him you needed him there by 6:30 for the family photos." Silence. Not a dramatic silence, a sick one. Because the second those words left her mouth, I watched Olivia go still in a way that told me Mum had just stepped on something she wasn't supposed to know existed. Nathan looked at Olivia, then at me, then back at Olivia. And Vivian, from across the room, stopped pretending not to listen. Olivia tried to recover with a laugh that sounded like cut glass. "Mum, I said he might come early if—" "No, you didn't," Mara said. "You told him the photographer wanted all immediate family there before the guests sat down." That landed harder than I expected, because Nathan's head snapped toward Mara at the words, "immediate family." Olivia saw it too. I could almost hear the recalculation behind her eyes. This wasn't just about getting rid of me anymore. It was about containing what the word family might mean if I stayed in the room long enough to keep talking. She reached for the framed engagement print under my arm. "Just give me that," she muttered, still smiling for the room. "We can sort this out later." I pulled it back without thinking. That was when her expression changed completely. Not embarrassed, not guilty, annoyed. Like I'd failed to follow a script she thought was obvious. Hand over the print, take the humiliation, leave quietly, and keep your mouth shut long enough for me to finish the night looking self-made. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't panic. It was strategy. Because Olivia wasn't trying to avoid a scene, she was trying to make sure I didn't stay in the building long enough to say one specific kind of sentence.
I didn't know exactly what sentence Olivia was terrified of. I just knew it had something to do with money. Because every time the conversation drifted anywhere near logistics, bills, or why I'd been useful enough to fetch her engagement print but not useful enough to stand in the room, she looked like someone trying to hold a door shut with both hands. Nathan noticed it too. "What exactly is going on?" he asked, and this time he wasn't smiling. Olivia answered too fast. "Nothing. Ethan's overreacting because he thinks helping with one small thing means he gets to dictate the whole evening." One small thing. That was almost funny. I looked at her. "One small thing?" She gave me a warning look so sharp it would have been comical if I weren't the one standing there holding it. "Don't," she said quietly. Not, "Please don't embarrass me," not, "Can we talk privately," just don't. Like I was a misbehaving employee about to make life difficult, not the brother she'd called crying in February when she was 2 mortgage payments behind. That memory hit me so hard, I said it before I'd fully decided to. "Interesting," I said, "because you weren't calling it one small thing when you needed help with the flat." The room changed. It was subtle, but it changed. Nathan's face went blank in that way people's faces do when they're trying not to react before they know whether they should be worried. Vivian actually set her champagne glass down. My mother looked at me like she wanted to stop the sentence before it finished, which told me she knew enough to be afraid, but not enough to understand how bad it was. Olivia went white. "What flat?" Nathan asked.
Olivia laughed, too quickly, too brightly. "Oh my God, this is exactly what I mean. Ethan lent me a little money months ago, and now apparently he's going to weaponize it because I asked him not to bulldoze my event." I almost admired the speed of it. She didn't deny the money, she just shrank it and changed the motive in one breath. A little money, weaponize it, bulldoze my event. 3 lies in one sentence. Mara spoke before I could. 2 months of mortgage arrears isn't a little money, Olivia. That landed like a dropped plate. Nathan turned so fast toward Mara, I thought he'd misheard her. Mortgage arrears? Olivia's head snapped toward my wife with pure panic. "Mara, stop. No anger in it now, just fear." And that was the first time I understood the shape of the lies she'd built. Nathan didn't know, or at least he didn't know enough. He knew whatever polished version Olivia had fed him. Timing issues, cash flow, maybe some temporary vendor mess, but not the part where I'd been keeping the floor from falling out under their flat. Nathan looked at Olivia. "You told me the bank issue got sorted in February." "It did get sorted," she said immediately. "With my money," I replied. That was the sentence, the one she'd been trying to stop from existing in the room. Vivienne's expression didn't change, but I saw something colder settle into it. Less suspicion, more confirmation. Nathan took a slow breath. "How much money?" Olivia actually stepped toward me then, lowering her voice so sharply it came out like a hiss. "If you care about me at all, you'll stop talking." That was the moment something in me finally clicked into place. Not because she was panicking. Panic I could understand. Because even now, after dragging us 5 hours across the country, after publicly pretending we weren't invited, after standing there in front of her fiancé's family and trying to paint me as unstable, her first instinct still wasn't, "I'm sorry." It was, "Protect the lie." And once I saw that, I knew this wasn't about one humiliating moment at a venue entrance. This was about how long Olivia had been using me as the hidden scaffolding under a life she was too proud to admit she couldn't afford.
I'd covered for Olivia so many times that saying the number out loud felt almost obscene. Not because it was false, because it made me sound stupid. Nathan was still staring at me. "How much?" Olivia shook her head at me once, tiny, desperate. A last warning. I ignored it. "Enough that I'm done," I said. "Enough that I'm not standing here being treated like some unstable idiot who turned up uninvited when I've spent the last year helping keep your life from caving in." Olivia's face crumpled on cue. "Oh my God, Ethan, listen to yourself." "No, you listen." That shut her up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room had gone quiet enough that every word landed exactly where I wanted it. "I covered 6 months of your mortgage," I said. "I paid the florist deposit when your card bounced. I covered the catering shortfall because you called me crying about how humiliating it would be if Nathan found out you were behind again. And as of tonight, I'm done. No more mortgage help, no more vendor payments, no more emergency transfers because you just need 1 more month. Not another penny." Nathan went still. My mother looked like she might actually be sick. Olivia just stared at me, mascara bright eyes wide with a kind of fury I hadn't seen since we were kids, except this time it wasn't sibling anger. It was panic at losing control of the room. "You promised you wouldn't do this," she whispered. The sheer nerve of that almost made me laugh. "You promised you'd stop lying to people and start sorting your own life out." Looks like we're both disappointed. That was when Nathan finally found his voice again. "You paid the florist?" Olivia jumped in before I could answer. "It wasn't like that. It was temporary, and he's making it sound..." Mara cut across her. "He also paid the second catering invoice." Olivia whipped around. "Why are you even speaking?" Mara didn't blink. "Because you keep acting like Ethan's humiliating you for fun instead of reacting to being publicly erased from an event he's partly funding." That landed harder than anything I had said. Funding. Not helping, not pitching in, funding. Vivian folded her arms. "Olivia, is any of this untrue?" Olivia laughed again, that brittle, frantic laugh she used when the floor started moving under her. "This is insane. Ethan always does this. He pays for one thing and suddenly it becomes his entire identity." "One thing?" I could feel the anger turning cold in my chest. "One thing?" I repeated. "Do you want me to list them?" That shut her up fast. Nathan looked between us. "List what?" I was about to answer when a woman in a black venue blazer approached with a clipboard in hand, already apologizing before she'd even reached us. "Sorry, Olivia, I know this is a bad moment, but the terrace drinks upgrade still needs to be authorized before we open that side of the bar." No one said anything. The woman glanced around, finally realizing she'd walked into something ugly, but it was too late. Nathan turned to Olivia slowly. "The what?" Olivia's face drained. "It's handled," she said. The event manager gave her an apologetic smile. "Not yet. You asked us to hold it until your brother arrived because you said he'd probably sort it if your card still wasn't working." And just like that, the whole thing got worse. Because it wasn't just that Olivia had invited me while pretending she hadn't. It was that even while she was trying to throw me out of the room, she was still expecting me to pay for the bar.
For a second, nobody moved. Not Olivia, not Nathan, not my mother. Even Vivienne looked stunned, which I didn't think she was physically capable of. Then Olivia snapped into motion and grabbed my arm. "Outside, now." Not please, not can we talk, just the same furious, panicked tone she'd been using all evening whenever the truth got too close to daylight. I pulled my arm free. No. That one word did more damage than the money, because if I'd gone outside with her, she still had a chance to reshape it. Cry, spin, accuse me of overreacting, tell Nathan I'd misunderstood something, promise me she'd fix it if I just didn't ruin the night. She knew that. I knew that. So did Mara, judging by the way her hand tightened around my sleeve. Nathan's father stepped closer. Olivia, what else has he been paying for? My mother finally found her voice. Can we please not do this in the hallway? No, Nathan said, still looking at Olivia. Actually, I'd really like to do it right here. That surprised me. Up until then, he'd been doing what men like Nathan do best, keeping his shoes clean while other people got dirty. But now the cracks were too obvious to ignore. Olivia saw it too, and switched tactics instantly. She started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobbing, just enough to make her voice shake and her mascara gloss over. It would have worked on me 6 months ago, maybe even 3. I was trying to protect tonight, she said, looking at Nathan, not me. I knew if Ethan got upset about anything, he'd make it all about money, and I didn't want to fight in front of your parents. There it was again. Not, I lied. Not, I panicked. Not, I'm sorry. Just another version of, Ethan is the problem. Mara gave a short, humorless laugh and pulled out her phone. You mean like this? She said. Olivia froze. Mara unlocked the screen and looked directly at Nathan. I have texts from Tuesday where Olivia asked Ethan not to mention the catering payment because she wanted your family to think everything was already settled. I also have one from yesterday asking him to arrive early in case the venue chased her for the terrace balance. Nathan held out his hand without taking his eyes off Olivia. Show me. Olivia lunged forward. Mara, you dare! Too late. Mara handed him the phone. I watched Nathan read in silence, once, then again, and I could actually see the point where confusion gave way to humiliation. Not mine, his. Because now it wasn't just that Olivia had hidden money problems.
It was that she had built an entire engagement dinner around the assumption that if the night started slipping, I'd quietly pay to hold it together while she kept pretending I didn't belong there. Nathan lowered the phone. How much was the terrace balance? He asked. Olivia wiped under one eye. It's not important. The event manager answered before anyone else could. $4,800, including the drinks upgrade and remaining venue overage. No one even looked at me after that. They looked at Olivia, because the room had finally understood what I had only just fully grasped myself. I wasn't invited to celebrate. I was invited in case her lies ran out of money.
We left before dinner started. Not because I wanted to storm out and make a point. I was just done standing in a hallway full of strangers while my sister tried to cry her way out of a financial ambush she'd built herself. Mara didn't say much in the car at first. She just sat there with that look she gets when she's too angry to waste words on the obvious. We were maybe 20 minutes into the drive home when my phone lit up with Mum's name. I almost let it ring out. I should have. She was crying before I even said hello. Ethan, please don't make this worse. That sentence told me everything about how the next 10 minutes were going to go. Not, Olivia lied. Not, I had no idea it was this bad. Just the same old family reflex. Contain the damage, preferably by asking the reliable child to swallow one more humiliation. I said, worse than what? Being told I wasn't invited to an event she still expected me to pay for? Mom went quiet for a second. Then she said something that actually made my stomach drop. She thought if you were there too long, Nathan's mother would start asking questions. I laughed once. No humor in it. No, Mom, I got that part. That's not what I mean. Mara turned in her seat and looked at me. She could hear enough from my side of the conversation to know the tone had changed. Mom lowered her voice, the way people do when they know what they're about to say is ugly enough to sound different out loud. Olivia has been telling them things about you. I gripped the steering wheel harder. What things? Another pause, long enough that I knew I wasn't going to like the answer. She told Nathan's mother that you can be difficult, that you don't like Nathan, and that sometimes you use money to control situations. That one stung, but not because it was creative. It was exactly the kind of lie Olivia would tell because it took the ugliest possible version of the truth and made it sound plausible. Yes, I'd given her money. Yes, I was angry tonight. If you started from the lie, the facts could be arranged to support it. But Mum wasn't finished. She also told them you two aren't very close because you can be overbearing, that you sometimes show up to things after drinking and make everything about yourself. I actually took my foot off the accelerator. Mara stared at me. What? I repeated it out loud because saying it made it feel more real and more insane at the same time. Apparently, I show up drunk and ruin family events now.
Mum started crying harder. I didn't know she'd said all that, Ethan. Vivian mentioned it tonight when things started going wrong. She said Olivia had been nervous for weeks that you might turn up in one of your moods and embarrass her. That was the moment. The whole night rearranged itself in my head. The glances at Vivian, the rehearsed smile, the invite situation. The way Nathan hadn't looked shocked enough when Olivia first said we weren't belong there. She hadn't improvised any of it. She'd prepared the room for me. She'd spent months turning me into a believable problem so that if she ever needed to erase me publicly, people would assume I was exactly the kind of man who might show up where he wasn't wanted and make a scene about money. And the sickest part was how careful the lie was. Not that I was abusive, not that I'd stolen from her, nothing dramatic enough to sound fake, just difficult, controlling, too involved, not close anymore for good reasons. Small lies, social lies, the kind that quietly rot your name in the background until one day a room full of people is ready to believe you don't belong in it. I said, "What else?" Mom hesitated. Then she gave me the one that finally killed whatever was left of my sympathy. She told Nathan's family she wasn't even sure you'd respect the guest list, Mom said quietly. That if you'd had a drink, you might show up anyway because you struggle with boundaries when you feel left out. I didn't say anything for a few seconds, because that was the lie she'd built the whole night on. Not just that I was difficult, that I was exactly the kind of pathetic, unstable man who might drive 5 hours to crash an event he hadn't been invited to. And suddenly the humiliation at the door felt smaller than what she'd really done. She hadn't just tried to keep me from speaking. She'd spent months making sure that if I ever did, nobody would trust the man saying it.
I didn't sleep much that night, not because of the money. By that point, the money had almost become the boring part. Painful, yes. Infuriating, yes. But simple. Numbers are honest. They tell you exactly how much you've lost. What kept me awake was realizing Olivia had turned me into a character. Not her brother, not the man who'd spent a year quietly keeping her flat from slipping underwater. A character. The difficult older brother, the one with boundary issues, the one who might show up where he wasn't wanted and make things awkward if he'd had a drink. It was such a careful lie that I almost admired it. The next morning, Nathan called me. Not to apologize, not to defend her, just ask one question. Did you know she's behind on the mortgage again? I sat up in bed so fast, Mara looked over from the bathroom doorway. What? Nathan let out a laugh that sounded more tired than amused. That's what I thought. He told me he'd gone through their shared account after the dinner blew up. Not because he suddenly turned into a detective, because once someone finds out the person they're marrying has been lying about one giant thing, every normal transaction starts looking suspicious. Olivia hadn't just hidden the money I'd given her. She'd been moving money around between accounts for months, using event money to plug credit card holes, using mortgage money to catch up other payments, then using my transfers to patch whatever looked most urgent that week. It was the financial equivalent of shoving furniture in front of a hole in the wall and hoping nobody moved it. The mortgage was behind again. 2 months. Even after the 6 months I'd already covered. I actually laughed when he told me that. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly Olivia that it almost felt scripted. She hadn't used my help to get stable, she'd used it to keep the performance running. Nathan was quiet for a second before he said, "There's something else." Of course there was. She told me the terrace balance would be covered after the weekend because she was expecting a transfer from you. There it was, the real architecture of the lie. She hadn't invited me because she wanted me there. She hadn't even invited me because she thought she might need help if things got messy. She invited me because the plan was always the same: get through the public part, keep me invisible long enough that Nathan's family never connected me to the money, then call me afterward in tears and have me clean up the last payment like I always did. I said, "How much is she short?" Nathan exhaled hard. "Venue balance and drinks overage are £4,800. Mortgage shortfall is another £3,300 if she wants to stop the lender letters getting worse." So there it was. Not a rough patch, not a one-off disaster. A full-blown financial sinkhole, still open, still waiting for me to fall into it one more time. And the part that made me feel physically ill wasn't even the number.
It was realizing that while Olivia was smiling at guests and posing for engagement photos and telling people I might crash the evening if I felt left out, she was also counting on me to save her again before Monday.
Olivia called me that afternoon. Not to apologize, not to explain why she'd spent months telling people I was some unstable, overbearing drunk who weaponized money. She opened with, "Can you please just let me finish before you start attacking me?" That was the first sentence. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I handled last night horribly," not even, "Can we talk?" Just a preemptive accusation, so if I reacted badly to the call where she was about to ask me for more money, she could still tell herself I was the unreasonable one. I put her on speaker so Mara could hear. Olivia started crying almost immediately, but it was the controlled kind. The kind where the tears are real enough to sound convincing, but the structure of the speech is still doing all the heavy lifting. "I panicked," she said. "You have no idea what kind of pressure I was under. Vivian already thinks I'm not good enough for Nathan, and when I saw you there, my brain went blank. I knew if anyone started asking questions about money, the whole night would implode." I said nothing. She kept going. "I never meant for it to happen like that. I just needed the dinner to get through one night without everything blowing up in my face." There it was, the closest thing to honesty I'd heard from her in weeks, and even that wasn't an apology. It was a logistics problem. She needed the night to survive. My humiliation was collateral. Then she tried the family version. "You know me, Ethan. You know I'm not a bad person. I was scared. I made a terrible choice. And I know that, but you're my brother. Family doesn't just throw each other away over one awful night." One awful night. I almost laughed, like the problem was a single bad decision at a venue entrance, not the year of lies, the money pit, and the little smear campaign she'd built around me so people would already be primed to believe I didn't belong there. Mara mouthed, "Wait for it." She was right, because the ask always came. It was just a matter of how long Olivia could pretend the call was about feelings before she got to the actual invoice. It took less than a minute. "Nathan's completely overreacting," she said, voice shaking again. "He froze the joint account this morning until he understands the full picture, which is insane because that means the mortgage payment can't go out and the venue is still waiting on the terrace balance. I just need a little time to get things straight." There it was. Not, "I hurt you," not, "I lied about you," not, "I'm ashamed," just the real emergency finally stepping into the room. "How much?" I asked. She went quiet for half a second. Probably because she knew asking the number out loud would strip the call of whatever dignity she was trying to keep. $4,800 for the venue, and $3,300 for the mortgage if I want to stop this spiraling before Nathan makes it worse. £8,100. She had publicly tried to erase me from an event she was still expecting me to finance, lied about me for months, and less than 24 hours later she was back on the phone asking for another £8,100 like the only thing that had gone wrong was timing. That was the moment I stopped feeling conflicted. Because up until then, some part of me still wanted a version of Olivia that felt guilty before she felt desperate. But she didn't. She felt desperate first, guilty second, if at all. And once you see that in someone, really see it, there isn't much left to say.
I told her no, not angrily, not loudly, just flat. There was a long silence on the line, and for a second I thought maybe that would be the moment she finally understood how badly she'd misjudged me, how badly she'd misjudged the entire situation. Instead, she inhaled sharply and switched from crying to outrage so fast it almost sounded rehearsed. "So that's it?" she snapped. "You're really going to punish me over one mistake?" That word again, mistake. Like she'd double-booked a table, like she'd forgotten my birthday, like publicly pretending I wasn't invited to an event I was still helping fund after months of telling people I was unstable and controlling was just one clumsy decision made under pressure. I said, "No, Olivia, I'm done funding the consequences of your lies." "You know what Nathan's like when he gets in his head," she shot back. "If the mortgage gets worse, he'll make this 10 times uglier. If the venue chases us, his mother will never let it go. I'm asking you to help me stop a disaster, not buy me a holiday." There it was again. Not remorse, risk management. You could strip every fake tear out of that conversation and the core of it would stay exactly the same. I need you to make the fallout go away. I said, "You didn't call because you were sorry. You called because the bills due." She went quiet. That silence told me more than anything else she'd said all day. Because if I'd been wrong, if some part of this had actually been about regret, shame, or the fact that she'd just blown up her relationship with the one person who'd spent a year keeping her afloat, she would have fought me on that. She would have denied it, or cried harder, or reached for some version of, "That's not fair." Instead, she went silent, which meant I'd hit the center of it. When she finally spoke again, her voice had changed. Less crying, less performance, more anger. "You don't understand what it's like to have everyone expecting you to have it together all the time." I actually laughed. "No, Olivia, you don't understand what it's like to be the person paying for your version of having it together." She tried one last time. "You're my brother. And you spent months telling people I was the kind of pathetic drunk who might crash your engagement dinner if I felt left out. I never said it like that." "You said enough." She started crying again, but by then it sounded almost mechanical to me. Not fake, just irrelevant, like hearing rain on the roof while you're trying to decide whether to burn the house down. I said, "Do you know what the worst part is? It's not the money. It's not even the lies about the mortgage. It's that I protected you. For over a year, I protected you. I covered bills. I kept my mouth shut. I never told Nathan, never told Mom the real numbers, never once used it to humiliate you. And you repaid me by trying to turn me into a problem you could quietly remove from the room." She didn't interrupt, so I kept going. "You didn't want a brother at that event. You wanted a wallet in the parking lot, close enough to fix the bill, far enough away that nobody had to know you needed one." That one landed. I could hear it in the way she stopped breathing for a second. "I was scared. I know. I panicked. I know. Vivian already hates me. Nathan was asking questions. Everything was falling apart. And your answer was to make me look unstable in front of a room full of people?" She started to say my name and I cut across it. "No more money. No more emergency transfers. No more covering for you. If the flat's too expensive, sell it. If Nathan doesn't know the truth, tell him. If your bills are a mess, deal with them. But I'm not rescuing you from this one, and I'm not letting you turn me into the villain so you can keep pretending your life works." Then I said the part one should have said a year earlier. "Don't call me for money again." And for once, I didn't leave any space in the sentence for negotiation.
She texted me 3 days later. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I can't believe I did that to you," not even, "Can we talk?" She sent, "Can you call Nathan and explain that you exaggerated because you were angry? If he thinks the mortgage stuff was temporary, I can still fix this." I stared at that message for a full minute. That was it. That was the cleanest version of Olivia I was ever going to get. Not ashamed, not heartbroken over what she'd done to me, not even particularly interested in whether I still wanted anything to do with her. Just one more attempt to use me as repair work. Nathan and I spoke once after that, briefly. I told him the truth, in the plainest terms I could manage. Not to punish her, just because I was done helping her build lies I'd eventually be asked to stand inside. He didn't tell me everything, but I gathered enough. The engagement wasn't officially off, but it was on pause, which is adult language for "we're pretending this might survive because saying it's dead out loud feels expensive." His family knew more than Olivia wanted them to know. The flat was still a problem, and for the first time in a long time, none of that was mine to fix. Mom tried for a few weeks to play peacemaker, not in a malicious way, in the usual tired parent way. She kept saying Olivia was ashamed, that pressure makes people cruel, that families shouldn't fracture over money. I told her it wasn't about money. It was about the fact that I spent over a year protecting Olivia from the consequences of her own life, and the moment my presence threatened the image she'd built, she'd tried to erase me from the room and make it look like I'd never belonged there in the first place. That landed better than I expected. Maybe because even Mom couldn't defend the door scene once the shock wore off. Maybe because seeing the numbers written down made it impossible to pretend this had been a misunderstanding. Or maybe because Olivia kept doing what Olivia always did, proving the ugliest version of the story true all by herself. A week after that first text, she messaged again. This time it was longer, softer, more careful.
She said she missed me, said she hated how things had turned out, said she knew she'd handled the dinner badly and wished she could take it back. For about 6 lines, it almost sounded like a real apology. Then the last paragraph hit. "If Nathan and I end up having to sell the flat, can you at least tell Mom and Dad it's because the market's bad and not because I lied about the mortgage? I can't handle them looking at me like that right now." That was the moment I stopped rereading her messages for hidden remorse, because even her best attempt at sounding sorry still ended with a request. Not for forgiveness, not for honesty, for image management, for one more little cleanup, one more quiet lie, one more way to soften the consequences without actually facing them. I didn't reply. I haven't sent her money since that night, and I won't again. If she loses the flat, she loses it. If Nathan leaves, that's between Nathan and the woman he discovered he was marrying. If our parents feel torn, I hate that for them,
but I'm not volunteering to be the family shock absorber anymore just because I'm the one least likely to scream. The strangest part is that losing the money bothers me less than losing the version of my sister I kept trying to believe in. The one who was embarrassed, not entitled, overwhelmed, not dishonest, temporarily drowning, not quietly building a life around the assumption that I'd always jump in after her. Maybe that version existed once, maybe it didn't. What I know for sure is this: Olivia didn't want a brother at that engagement dinner. She wanted a hidden account with a pulse, someone close enough to cover the bill, quiet enough to disappear from the photos, and loyal enough to swallow the insult so she could keep pretending she'd built her life herself. And when it all finally collapsed, she still didn't call because she missed me. She called because there was another payment due.